The French family is made up of three, Kent, Michelle, and Everly, and has decided the time is now. We have left fast-paced careers in broadcasting and entertainment, decided to world school our 8-year-old daughter, and packed up our lives to travel the world in an effort to live life to the fullest.
Come with us on our podcast as we chronicle our journey around the globe, bringing you stories of Frenchitivity, which includes the 3 pillars of possibility, creativity, and tranquility, and ultimately learn what drives others to live life without a net.
On today's podcast, we discuss why time is the greatest luxury.
To me, slow travel is like the most beautiful way that you can travel. It is a luxury though, right? Because time is the greatest luxury. And so many of us have built lives that just don't prioritize having that amount of time to go, do, see, explore, and leave home.
Today's guest is Jess, the founder of KidFriendlyStays.com, a beautifully crafted resource created from her own family's adventure across 14 countries with a toddler and an infant. After navigating the chaos of planning, filtering, and researching family travel accommodations, Jess turned that frustration into a mission, making travel more accessible and less overwhelming for parents everywhere.
If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe to the Frenchitivity Podcast on your preferred platform and visit Frenchitivity.com to subscribe to our newsletter. You can also help others find our podcast with a follow or a comment and spread the word. We hope this conversation inspired you.
Kent, Michelle, and Everly spreading Frenchitivity all over the world. This entire family creating possibilities all over the world. Frenchitivity, possibilities all over the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Frenchitivity Podcast. Kent and Michelle back with you, and our special guest here on this episode is Jess from Kid Friendly Stays. At Kid Friendly Stays, Instagram, and KidFriendlyStays.com is the website. Certainly just stood out to both of us when you think of Kid Friendly Stays. Just the name in itself just rings true for so many people, Jess. It's perfection, because for all those of us that want to travel with kids and take our families on adventures, that is something that we think about all the time. So thank you for being with us. And as we kick things off, I just want to know, how did you come up with Kid Friendly Stays? Where did this idea, I'm kicking it off with a huge question here. Where did this whole thing come from?
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, that is a big question. So a short answer to the big question is this idea, this handle, which is Kid Friendly Stays, which is also a website, stemmed from a big trip that my family and I took. And when we got home from this trip, which took us around the globe with a baby and a toddler, and everyone started asking questions as we were back and reconnecting with people, it just became really obvious that so many people have a desire, perhaps once they've started a family, to get out there and to continue traveling. But there's this fear maybe that exists that travel won't be the same, which is very accurate and true. But also that travel just cannot be something that's easy or that's enjoyable when you have children with you. And so my goal was, how can I help pull back the curtain a little bit and share the ways that we have traveled, the places we've gone, the accommodations that have worked for us, and hopefully inspire other families to do the same thing.
Bravo.
Love
yes.
it. You're speaking our language.
Yes, you are speaking our language.
Yes.
And I think we should wind back a little to understand what the adventure is that you went on. I think that a lot of people can resonate with, like, we love to travel. Now we have a family. These little beautiful beings came into our life. So how do we continue to do that? But you did it in a big way. So can you describe for us what your journey was and how you came to that decision to travel around the globe with kids?
Yeah. I mean, our story is not unique. My husband and I were two individuals kind of just in the corporate grind, doing the thing in jobs that left us maybe feeling a little burnt out some days. And we have always loved travel. So we, with our son at the time, had been taking little trips here and there and had taken him on his first flight and had been trying to really explore and nurture in him a love for travel and seeing new places. But we sort of got to a point where we thought, maybe this isn't exactly where we want to be right now. We were pregnant with our second child, and we had this sort of like come to Jesus moment where my husband thought he was having a heart attack, and he was in the ER just making sure that he was fine, where we sort of said, like, I don't know, is this really where we want to be right now? Is this the sort of headspace that we envisioned having at this point in our lives and our careers with kids? And we decided what we were going to do was hit pause, and we were going to, have the baby, God willing, she would be healthy and everything would be good. And then when she turned 6 months old, we were going to take some of our savings that I had been hoping would go toward like an Airbnb investment property, and we were going to just blow it. And we were going to travel for a year instead, because it felt like, 20 years from now, the investment of having taken a year to travel with our kids would be just as great a return as it might have been if we had invested it in an Airbnb. So that's exactly what we did. We didn't have any big ambitions to travel forever or turn it into a full-time job or anything like that. We just wanted to take some time, and we had kind of built in a system that allowed us to do that.
How did you go about putting this trip together? Because you now are a tremendous resource for others trying to travel with kids. What was the research? What were the conversations with you and your husband about trying to put this trip together with, as you mentioned, a baby and a toddler?
Yeah. We had a couple places in mind that we knew we wanted to go to or return to with our kids. And so we started to formulate a plan, and the plan was never to loop the globe. But as we started to put the pieces together, that's what began to make the most sense, because the only kind of rule that I set in place was direct flights only. So I didn't want to be dealing with
yes,
connections and, being in a country where we didn't, and having to deal with a delay and finding hotels and whatever, especially with a baby and a toddler. So we chose our first spot, which was going to be Hawaii. We knew we wanted to go back to Kauai and spend some time there. And we said, well, we can't get there direct from Detroit at the time. So let's go to Joshua Tree first. And we're going to spend a week and a half there. And then we'll take a direct from LAX over there. And then that's kind of how we charted the path. And obviously traveling with a baby, it would be different now. She's our youngest, who was 6 months when we left, is now 3. And her ability to be adaptable is much greater than it was in those days. So we had certain limitations we set in place just out of our own comfort level. Is there decent medical care where we're going? Does this place feel like it will be safe for an infant? Is the accommodation that we're staying at, does that feel safe for an infant and a toddler? Just questions like that kind of served as the guardrails for how we were going to choose where we went. But the direct flight path was really the critical piece.
It's a good rule. It's definitely a good rule. I want to talk a little bit about something you said, that this fund, so you saved to be able to invest potentially in a property, but decided that actually the best investment you could make would be into this adventure, which we 100% stand by and understand. And then, after making that decision, I have a 2-part question. So what kind of things do you think you leverage? You're in this corporate career, you're obviously, being successful in whatever metrics we might want to look at. And you said, actually, we're going to live life differently. I'm going to do this. But what do you think you actually still had to take from the experience you have of your careers and your lives to put into making that decision a reality?
Yeah. I mean, that's a big question too. So I will say, obviously, to your point, we have always been a career-driven people. we waited to start a family until a little bit later. We really did, both my husband and I, place a lot of emphasis and priority on finding careers that we really enjoyed and we loved, and then kind of growing within those careers. So when it came time where we were kind of contemplating what do we do here, it was a really big decision. And we knew that as we went into it, we did want to set ourselves up for success on the trip itself with 2 kids now, which was new, right? And surprisingly hard. And then also set ourselves up for being able to come home and go back to work when we were ready to do that. So there was a lot of thinking and strategizing that went into it, and kind of just a lot of like, well, I hope it works out. There is a book called Die with Zero. I feel like that title is a little, it kind of turns people off. But there is a theory in it that talks about memory dividends and how, when you are investing in memories earlier in your life, you have this great stretch of time where they are paying out returns. And I lost my mom a decade ago to cancer. I lost my dad recently. And so there is kind of this part of me that just wants to really like shake things up and take advantage of the time we have and just not ever wait and assume that time will exist later in life to do these things. So I full-heartedly believe in this concept of memory dividends. And I will say, having come back from that time away, granted now some time has passed, there is truly not a day that goes by in my life where there's not a memory from that experience that pops up that either is like just a very, vivid memory of something we did, but it might have been like, how did we make a decision there? What did one of the kids say or do? Or, it just has, it seems so corny maybe, but it's become such a part of who we are as a family. And our children were young. They won't necessarily remember any of it. Our 3-year-old at the time, maybe some pieces, and certainly there are pictures everywhere and they're reminded of it constantly. But I feel very strongly that experience helped to shape the kids into who they are now and ideally who they become, right? We want to raise kids who are adaptable and who are curious and who take, great interest in seeing how the rest of the world lives and operates. So, yeah. Does that answer your question? I feel like I kind of went off on a line there.
Yes.
Beautifully. And let's see, you're like,
well, I'm sitting here listening to you and going, wow,
this
is just, it's resonating with me and with us and with how we went about our journey. And our daughter now is 8. And we always say, so a little bit obviously older than your kids were when you took your journey. And we constantly go, how is she going to unpack this over the next couple of years? Like, how is this going to show itself? So it's awesome. I mean, we're relatively new from coming back from our journey. So this is all new for all of us. But as I wanted to ask you, and Michelle, you're going to have to help me with this, but there is that dreamer or the one that says, we're going to do this. And you kind of bring the visionary. So Michelle was the visionary with us. Not that I didn't want to do this, but it's like, if we don't do this now, we're not going to do this. And I'm like, next year sounds great. Let's do next year. I wasn't ready to step away.
Did you know someday is not on the calendar? Have you ever found someday on the calendar?
I love that.
There.
Yeah.
So I had to, and rightfully so, with my career, some things were happening, which made it like, okay, maybe it is the right time. And it was the right time for our daughter, her age as well. But Michelle certainly was the one that said, what about doing this? And what if we did it this way? And initially I'm like, oh, it's a great idea. But again, let's look at someday. How did that conversation go with you and your husband? Obviously the experience that he had, but were you the one that was kind of like, hey, this is the time? Or were you both really on the same page?
I think that I probably proposed the vision. And again, a lot of it was driven by this like space in my brain that is constantly saying like, hey, don't wait, right? Like, let's enjoy all the things right now. And also, let's protect our family, right? And if I see you struggling with your health, which is directly related to the work that you're doing, like, let's take a step back and think about that. And I think we both sort of just met each other where we were at in those moments. And when we couldn't see, it was just kind of like a unique thing. We couldn't see what the next step was so clearly in terms of our career and home life that it didn't make sense not to make this decision, right? There was this sort of, I think so much of our lives are planned to the T, right? And it was, for us, it was like, okay, we're having a baby, we're having, our second child, and all of that was very crystallized and clear. But the things outside of it, there was just room for molding. So when we first brought it up, it was like the craziest idea. I had always said I wanted to travel for a year. Like, when you're having those conversations with a partner, and I think we both just anticipated it would be much, much further off. But, part of the reason that our relationship works and that I married the guy is that he can be a little like crazy alongside me sometimes too. And I feel like if you meet someone and you're with someone who says like, yeah, maybe we should travel for a year, you found the right person. And then if you can stay together after you travel for a year, with children,
we've made that very clear. How did the trip go? Well, we're still together. So
yeah, I love
exactly.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Like, yes, exactly. Like marriage hack. If you can find someone who's willing to like meet you in these like ideas and is like, let's go for it. Let's do it. And then, support the journey, support the return, which we'll talk about in a second. You're right. Like, go for it. Absolutely.
Well, and I will add one small anecdote, which is that Kauai was one of our first stops, and we happened to be at like a little coffee shop, shave ice place in Honolulu. And we were chatting with the cashier at the shop, and she was like, oh, where are you from? And we gave her like a very, 20-second version of our background and story. And she was like, gosh, that's crazy. The owners of this shop did something very similar, but they were gone a much longer time. And they actually filmed it all, and it became a documentary movie. And I was like, what? And so we met the couple, and it was these two like professional surfers who had a child, and she was pregnant at the time. And anyway, they ended up creating this like beautiful movie, and I believe it's called Given. And that was, I think, their son's name. But anyway, it followed them around this big trip around the world. And it was sort of felt like fate that we happened to get the chance to hear about them and then meet them and chat with them. But she did say, she took my husband aside and she was like, I want you to know, we came very close to getting divorced on that trip. And she's like,
great. At the very beginning,
you really need to, yes,
location.
Exactly. It was meant to be. And she was like, you really need to give your wife credit with a baby, because you can't possibly understand like what this experience feels like for her. And so bless that woman's heart, because I think she planted the seed that really helped us get through the trip. It is hard traveling with a baby. And so, that was perfect timing.
Kismet. That's kismet. That is like when it's all, and you just know it's supposed to be happening. And in travel, there's so many moments like that where you're like, is this real? How it all aligns. So many places to go. I'd like to touch on that, traveling with a baby, and we're all sort of establishing that, whatever age your child is, we all still believe this is possible. And also you phrased it really beautifully that you were sort of at this place. We described it very similarly, that like all is well, and we've done all the steps that make a beautiful life, and we're very fortunate and everything is great. And also, what else? And how can we add to this experience? Like, we are meant to experience things as humans, and this world is big. How do we do that? So deciding to do it with a baby and a support system. I feel like there's a lot of moms who, we have the mom groups and we try to do different things, but that's a hard time, sort of regardless of maybe where you're at. So can you touch on that a little bit of like what support was like? Having a young one, obviously your spouse, very supportive and important, but that's an interesting time to not have friends or family or others around. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. With the second child, it was kind of nice to not have to, quote unquote, like, I did go back to work for a couple of months and then, and then we took this time away. So it was initially, the thought was it was just going to be so nice to get this time together as a family that we probably will never necessarily have again. And especially while the kids are so little. Now that said, it was so hard, right? Every day was very hard. I think it would have been hard at home, but there would have been more support, to your point. So we were very conscious about each taking time for ourselves. And even if it was like a half an hour every day where each adult had a moment to leave, do something on their own, take a hike, whatever, like that was a big piece of it. And then I will say too, we went to Bali for 6 weeks. That was where we stayed really the longest stretch during our travels. And one of the reasons we did that is because we were able to hire a nanny in Bali who was with us several days a week and allowed just a bit of flexibility with one of the kids or even both of the kids in some instances. So that was, that was really helpful. But otherwise, it's hard, but it was a trade-off. And I think it was one that we kind of went into eyes wide open. And so we knew what to expect as best we could. But like I said, it's just hard no matter where you're at, and you kind of see these things like memes or whatever. That's like parenting is hard if you're at home or if you're sitting on a beach, and I guess if you get to choose, like, I'll sit on the beach with the baby. That's fine, So, yeah.
Well, and I appreciate you shining a light on some other things as well. I think you've sort of begun to say it without necessarily saying it, is culturally, other places, the family life is different. It's one of the things that we desire to experience the most. What is family life in different places? And fortunate when you're traveling and not working in the same kind of structure that maybe we take on when we're at home. So you kind of said it without even needing to really expand much further of like, you were able to have a nanny even in Bali. And, when we go to the restaurants on the beach in Bali, they come over and play with your kid. And it's just a different experience. You may have found that other places as well. But that was one of our deepest explorations of like, what does family life look like other places?
Yes, I completely agree with you there. And I think when we came back, people were like, gosh, so were the kids welcomed in your travels? Like, did you go these places where kids were like welcome? And kind of like what we came to realize along the way was the place where our children are least welcomed is in the United States. As sad as it is, like you do go to restaurants, other places. And I remember the first time in Bali when a server came by and just picked up the baby and left. And I was like, what is happening? But that is what they do there, and she was over bouncing the baby. So I could eat my food and it was very strange and beautiful at the same time. And it's just like, yeah, I was shocked. I was shocked to come to the realization that most every place we went was far more accommodating to families than where we lived all of our lives.
Crazy. When people ask me about the trip, I grew up in Orange County and I call it the nice bubble. Very fortunate to have grown up here, but preconceived notions about what it was like outside this bubble, let alone outside the US, was the unknown. And it's like, oh, it's going to be dangerous. It's going to be unwelcoming, whatever it may be. But what we've come to find, it was so nice that people judged you by how you treated your family and how you treated each other and how you treated them. No one ever asked, what did you do for a living? Or even, it was about family at its core, which really was incredible and really everybody opened their arms to our family and treated us as their own. And I think that kind of rolls into my next question, because when we chatted prior, the word anxiety comes up a lot. I don't want to do this because it's going to be crazy with kids. It's going to give you anxiety. And you already mentioned some touch points of things that you did to kind of manage that. But when I say slow travel to you, what goes through your mind?
Well, in my mind, I mean, slow travel is staying long enough to feel a sense of community in a place. And that really did create a much different experience. You know, I have thought often, if we had gone to Bali for a week, would I have enjoyed it? And I don't know that I would have, because the pieces of our experience there that meant the most and that left the most lasting impression on me were the people and the community. And we just wouldn't have had the opportunity to become as ingrained without that. Slow travel with children also, you know, if given the opportunity, makes all the difference in the world, because there's only so much you can do with your kids in one day while keeping sanity in the home, right? I mean, their bandwidth is limited. As much as I also believe, like, bring them along, do the things, you know. For us, it just wasn't realistic. Our bandwidth is limited when we have children with us. So, yeah, to me, slow travel is like the most beautiful way that you can travel. It is a luxury, though, right? Because time is the greatest luxury. And so many of us have built lives that just don't prioritize having that amount of time to go, do, see, explore, and leave home. What do you say?
Oh goodness. Well, the reason I kind of went there with you on this, you mentioned just, you know, the people in Bali and being so loving to your family, and you don't get to experience those moments. You might very quickly, but not often enough, and not enough to realize exactly what the culture is all about unless you are slow traveling. And our first experience for me to really embrace the culture was Thailand. And we were able to stay 5 weeks in Thailand. And I think that was really understanding what that meant, and then moving to Bali, like you mentioned, and we stayed at places a little bit longer in Bali. So it was like we had bikes and we go to the same cafe in the morning and, let's go to the store and get some food. It wasn't like we got to go to this waterfall and we got to go snorkeling here and we got to check all the boxes. We were actually living within someone else's culture and giving our daughter and ourselves enough time to breathe and to enjoy and to really take it all in. And I don't think, as an American culture, speaking for myself, was like, you get 14 days if you're lucky, and maybe you can take 7 at a time. It takes you 3 days to decompress once you're there. Then all of a sudden you need to check all the boxes on Audi, do all these things, and then you start worrying about going home. It's like, it's a cyclical thing that you just, you know, that we were so caught up in. So that's the slow travel. Yes, it's a luxury. And like, I can't imagine doing it any other way. Now that I've seen it, I lived it. We talk about it now, like coming back. I don't know if we can do what we did anytime soon, but if we go somewhere, I'd rather just go somewhere for a month if we can do it and stay one place. You know, let's just stay one place and experience it. So that's kind of how it hit me.
I think that was one of our takeaways too. We have not been able to see it through yet. But when we left that experience, we said, like, okay, if we can just do 1, 2, maybe 3, maybe even just 1 month a year elsewhere in one spot, to your point, you know, and just live someplace else for a month, a year, that would be, I think, perspective shifting.
Yeah.
The Frenchitivity YouTube channel will have you screaming. Kent, Michelle, and Everly make up the Frenchitivity family who packed up their lives to travel the world in an effort to live life to the fullest. Greece, Thailand, Croatia, Indonesia, and New Zealand are just a few of the countries they experienced along the way. Now they want you to join the journey. Subscribe to the Frenchitivity YouTube channel to see the world with Kent, Michelle, and Everly, one adventure at a time.
One question. When are we going to post this?
Yeah, perspective shifting, I think, is a great term and way to look at any of it. And I think this goes even full circle back to what you said before, that even though your kids were young, that our belief is that this experience does live within them. And whether or not they have all the distinct memories that we will, and perhaps they will through pictures and video and the way we all document now, but what we know to be true is it will be in them. And the goal is to be planting those seeds of like the flexibility, adaptability, understanding other cultures, wanting to slow down, wanting to take things in. So whether or not they have the same memories we do, what we know is like we are one little human at a time trying to kind of change the pace at which we operate. Like if we could just slow down like that, if we could. And, you know, we're just not set up like that. And the fast pace sometimes can be enjoyable and fun and exciting. But at the end of it, it's like you said, I mean, this time, which is the greatest gift, how are we actually spending it? And what are we taking in those moments? So yes, slow travel, we recommend, but we also know we have to be sustainable. So maybe that can lead us to the next step of when you return. Can we talk about reentry?
I don't know if I want to talk about reentry.
We're only talking about reentry.
We're
I know,
reentering right now, and I'm not really happy about reentering. Yes.
Well, there's a
you
few
guys, I have lots of
aspects.
thoughts on that.
Yeah.
You know,
Can you take us through your reentry?
well, the first thing I'll say that I couldn't have predicted was when we were traveling, people that we met while we were traveling, or people from home would say like, do you feel so different? Have you changed, you know? And we kind of looked at each other and were like, I don't feel any different. Do you feel any different? You know, like, no, I don't know. I think this has been amazing, but like, it hasn't changed us per se. And then we got home. And what had happened was that over that course of time, without realizing it, our conversations had gone from like, what time are you picking up so-and-so? When is this happening? What is that work event? When are the taxes due? What is this? You know, like all of these like logistical and nitpicky little things, right? Some of the stuff that's like work drama, friend drama, family drama, like even if it's not yours, it's in your periphery. And the distance that was created on this trip just changed our conversation. The things we were talking about day in and day out were like, gosh, it's crazy that every time you're driving past a temple in Bali, the driver is honking to ask for permission to pass from the gods. And like, what does that mean to you? And like, we're stepping over these sacrifices on the sidewalk every day. And like, how does that feel? You know, like, what does this say to us about our relationship with God or something greater than ourselves? Or in Switzerland, hiking the mountains and like, you know, our conversations just shifted from little things to very big things, but we never saw it happen. And it wasn't until we got home and kind of like plunk landed back down in the middle of all of our people who were still having all of the same conversations about all of the little things that we were like, oh, we did change kind of, you know? And that was really hard, actually. It sounds silly to say now, but man, being in that place at that time, I remember I was just so thankful we had each other to kind of like look at and be like, whoa, what happened here? You know, and how do we make sure that we're never all the way back in that smaller mindset without leaving room and space for the conversations that like, you know, would need to be had, but so often are just not had because there's nothing to inspire them. That was kind of like the biggest piece of it. And I'd say that meaning like, no offense to any of our friends and family, because like, that's all, everyone falls into that pattern. It's just, you get so into the minor details of everyday life, right? That sometimes we forget to step out and really have the bigger, meaningful conversations until something comes along and shakes your life up. And usually it's not something good, right? So that was my biggest thing. Of course, then we started looking for work. That became a whole a whole thing. We knew we both wanted to go back to work, but it was like, how are we going to find the right jobs? What are we willing to sacrifice to get ourselves to the right jobs and right roles? So it was really, coming home was not as easy as we anticipated. That said, it has worked out beautifully and just the way it was intended to, but it definitely wasn't the smooth transition back to normalcy that we were thinking we would have. What have you found?
Ditto.
I'm just going to sit.
I don't know if you can tell. We're just sitting there taking it all in going, oh my gosh, these are exactly the same conversations that we have been having. Yeah. And I will just say one thing. Community on the road, community on our trip. And you might have experienced this too, but like, I don't know what the percentage is, 2%, 1% of families do what we did.
We should figure it out.
We're gonna put all the chips in the middle of the table, and we're gonna, there's something more for our family. We're gonna take a risk. We don't know what's on the other side, but we're gonna do this thing and do it. Mm-hmm. So get out there, and all of a sudden, this 2% or 1% is really a big community of people that have actually done this. There's a lot of people out there that you're finding, with your platform. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so many people. And we did a podcast in Koh Lanta. How cool is that to say that we were in Thailand doing a podcast? Like, I never thought I'd say that. But
as you do.
We interviewed a family that we met. And he said to me, our relationship, looking at me, what we have is different. It will be forever different than anything I have when I go home. I'm going to go home to my friends, who I love my friends, but the conversations are going to be exactly the same as when I left. Their problems and concerns and drama is going to be exactly the same as when I left. And it'll be the same day after day after day. But what I can talk to you about and the conversations that we can have are beyond anything that I've, thought I would be having. And so that is something that we feel the same. And it's like bringing people back into our lives that inspire us, that want to push us and want more. And how do we continue that and continue those conversations that we had on the road and on our travels and continue to have them back here? Yeah. What you say, Michelle?
I just was soaking in what Jess said and just sitting with it. I believe it's why we do this podcast. I believe it's why we, upon reentry, are doing things slowly and carefully. And a lot of what you've stated, and so much love for the people that could take for us to come back to. Like, we missed our community and we missed our people. And we also do come back with new perspective, new questions, new ways of looking at things. It was kind of the whole point that our journey was to question and shift the paradigm if we could. And we're still exploring that. So I completely just sit with what you've said. And I think it's why we seek to find this kind of community, like-minded people who are willing to sort of say, well, what if we go? And then when we come back to this amazing place, how do we come back in? And what I know to be true is when the conversation within ourselves changes, the dance has to change with other people too. And so if we're different, they don't have to be different, but they interact with us differently because we're different. And so the dance changes no matter what. And I find that currently to be so intriguing. Like, I'm just a student of life and a curious human who is like, where is my place in this world now? And I don't know the answer to that one yet, but yeah.
Well,
I resonate with
extreme validation too. Not that we are looking for that, but it's so great and refreshing to hear you say that because we don't know, is this normal?
We never did reentry before.
We've never been.
I know, right?
Before.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of a space capsule somewhere that came out from outer space, and now I'm reentering to the Earth and trying to figure this all out.
This is not the first time that I will say this, and then I have some follow-up questions for you. It was like, one of our very first podcasts, we were on the road and we spoke with someone who we got connected with who had traveled. And in the middle of it, we kind of were in this deep conversation like this and saying, and then I was like, did you know this was going to be therapy? Like, you didn't know. We bring you on the podcast to have therapy.
I love it. Yeah. For real.
Yeah.
So upon reentry and everything that's very insightful that you've shared and how your family has changed and is like beautiful and thinks of these travel memories every day, which I love. Tell us about what you're doing now? How did the website come about? What did you go back to work in a more traditional sense at first, and now you do this? Like, tell us what's going on.
Yes. So I did go back to work. My career has been in public relations. And so I said, okay, well, while I'm looking for work, I've always wanted to, kind of like full steam, put work into something of my own and see where it can go. And so I thought I'll just launch this website, while I'm job hunting. It's never as easy as it sounds. But I did create a website, and it's kidfriendlystays.com. And the goal was to chronicle a lot of our experience and takeaways on that site, but then also to create a resource that made it easier for folks to find accommodations that kind of like strike a balance between being aesthetic and beautiful in a place where a parent or someone like myself wants to be spending their money on, but also catering to families. Because it just felt like there were a lot of those types of places that existed, but they were all hidden gems. Like you had to search Airbnb for hours on end in order to find the right spot. And then when you did, it was magic. But people would always be like, how did you find that? And I was like, well, don't we all just spend 3 hours scrolling Airbnb before bed? And they said no. So anyway, that turned into the Instagram page, and that's sort of where most of my content is living right now, is on Instagram, because that's really where the community formed. And so there's still some work that needs to be done over on the website, and I would love to continue gearing that up. There's a newsletter that I put out that I tried to make a little more accessible because it's got links people can find more easily and readily. But that's what happened. And I did go back to work full time. And so that kind of stayed a little bit of a part-time endeavor. And then when we moved down to Kentucky recently for the job that my husband ended up taking, I say recently, but actually he took it almost a year ago now, I switched back over to part-time. So I'm still doing public relations for the corporation that I was working for, but I have a little more free time to invest into this side project, which is really fun because it keeps all of that, cool travel stuff really at the forefront of my mind. And I'm constantly trying to like spin an experience around a different way and find a different perspective to be able to share on it, because so much of that stuff just lives like in the back of my brain. And it takes, watching a video to be like, oh my gosh, I forgot that thing happened, or that's something that's totally worth sharing with people as a takeaway. And so anyway, that's what I'm doing now. And of course, we're still out traveling and adventuring whenever we can, but we have a kindergartner now, and he's in kindergarten. So we're limited in terms of what we can do at this age and stage for our family. So we're trying to be as creative as possible and really maximize the time that we have available to get out of town and go, create experiences and make sure there's always something to anticipate on the calendar.
Oh, I love that. Always something to anticipate. I love that. And I think you said something there too that is so important, that even in someone's in their career and they know what they're doing because it's what they do. Someone travels, they know what they're doing. And you just sort of start to think everyone knows. Everyone knows how to find a hidden gem. Like everyone just knows. And then you start talking and looking and even looking at some of your content. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And I never thought about putting it that way. Doesn't everybody know? No, people don't know. Right. And so it's like now our responsibility to share so that other people can have a more seamless experience, or even just think it's accessible. I think that that's where, much of our efforts go towards just sharing that it's possible, and you sharing that it's possible to find incredible places for your family to stay, to feel safe, for it to be aesthetically beautiful for you, to create core memories for them. It's safe. And some of the places that you have on your website look epic, so incredible, so fun. So I hope that everyone takes some time to look at that. And yeah, what you've turned your journey into, like that precious investment of time, like really to leverage that now into the future is perfect. I love that.
Yeah. And you have quite the Instagram following. And I wanted to ask you, what has surprised you about the growth? And did you see this coming? And two-part question. And also, what are some of the questions you might get, because we often get, wow, I wish I could do that, or you're so lucky. You know, a couple of those get thrown in there as well. But we'll start with the growth. Like, did you, when this thing started going, you're like, oh my gosh, what's happening with this?
You know, it's funny. It was the Switzerland playgrounds that were the instigator for growing the Instagram account. It was like, that's what it took to get some people interested and to have a couple pieces of content sort of gain a following or more, more interest. Instagram is hard. I wish I were one of those people that was just like casually throwing stuff up there and everyone flocked to it. But it's been a lot of work, a surprising amount of work. And thank God, I love travel so much. And I so firmly believe that other people should be thinking about the ways that they can do it, because if it wasn't a passion, there's no way I would be able to invest, the time that goes into an Instagram account. But that said, it's surprising, yes, but also each day I'm trying to put out information that I wish someone had told me. And it's all about like, where can I provide value to others who might have a similar idea, or where can I provide a glimpse into our experience that would entice other people to consider the same. And I think early on, there was a lot of that, like, well, it'd be, nice if everyone could do that. Like, must be nice sort of thing. But I've always tried to be very transparent in what we did, we left our jobs and we traveled the world, but we slow traveled, we did it as affordably as we could, but we also like cashed in, what was going to be something else in favor for this trip. And we came back to work. So it's not, I hope it doesn't feel completely unrealistic for people. The other thing I will say too is like, I am a total personal finance nerd. And it's, for the people who know me, it's not surprising that, okay, all of our pennies are going over into this bucket, and like, hey, why don't we use them for X, Y, Z? So I just, if there are ways that I can share about budgeting or about how you're thinking about expenses today that can support a different sort of lifestyle tomorrow, and how you can, try to set your life up in a way that you have flexibility, even if it is just to take 3 weeks off a year, like our European counterparts, right? And have that sort of longer term experience. I think that's just as magical and just as life-changing, especially if you can find a way to do it each year, right? And in America, we just don't have that same privilege. So you got to just kind of blow up the expectation and just say, screw it and leave for a year to do what you need to do and then come back.
Well, it's when you really take your values into consideration. And I will briefly acknowledge and touch on it as well. I'm sorry for your loss and your mother and your father, and we can relate. And I do think that there is something about processing loss and really starting to understand what time is sort of an illusion anyway, and like, how much of it do we have? And so do we want to be financially set up for success? Absolutely. Do we want to pass on legacy to our children? Absolutely. But legacy comes in a lot of different ways, a lot of different formats. And so, yes, what is the risk and what is the financial responsibility and what do you have to do when you come back? But I think what we're all saying is we're willing to do whatever it takes to instill a certain set of values into our family, into our legacy. And yeah, it comes with sacrifice. It comes with choice. It comes with a lot of things, but it also comes with that memory bank and leveraging that we understand that a moment is just like, this is all we've got. This moment right here with you right now, this is all we have. And so if we can share part of that of like, we know it's fleeting. And so here's what we did with that. I think it's important.
Yeah, agreed. Perfectly said.
Before we let you go, we started by kind of talking about the tipping point of what kind of sent you guys on this incredible journey. And I wanted to circle back though and ask you about, your husband and how he was affected by this trip, and has he been able to put his health ahead of everything else and maybe change the way that he looks at his career now?
Yeah. That is a great question. That's like the big question.
What do you think, Jess?
Yeah, what do you think about that?
So I think I would like to see it. Well, here, let me step back. When we got home, he did a TED Talk in Detroit with our TEDx Detroit program about the trip. And we sort of chatted together about like what the focus of that would be. And what we came to was that to find meaning in life, you really have to have a daily connection with something bigger than yourself. And in Bali, we saw it with the gods. In the mountains, we saw it with nature. And it just so happened everywhere we went, there was this connection that we saw other communities have with something bigger than themselves that was daily. It was ever present. It was omnipresent. And we said, okay, when we get home, like this is what we need to try to bring back into our daily lives to help maintain some of this mental health perspective that we've gained on the trip. And so he did kind of do a beautiful job of really vocalizing that takeaway. And it wasn't like it was just this instant, thing we thought of. It took a lot of time to come up with like, what is one core thing that we're leaving this experience with? And that was it. Now, he's back in another role that is high pressure and has lots of expectations around it. And it's not unlike the type of job that he was in before. I will say the stress management is hands down so much different this time around. But it's not as though we did this big trip and it was a cure-all for the rest of our lives, right? Yeah. Like there's sort of this check-in process that I think we don't do as often as we need to do, but that we can be better at, about kind of bringing ourselves back to that place and doing like the, whatever that little checklist looks like for us. We do it sometimes. We do it often enough, but we could be better with it because it is so easy. And again, I think it's human nature you find yourself back in the spot, and you really, really have to be strategic and thoughtful and mindful, right? To continue to live in a way that is better for you and is the right way to be thinking about things, and not to get bogged down by the everyday stressors that exist around us. One of the things from the trip too that I'll leave you with, because I could go on about this forever and ever, is like the importance of things to us individually. And while we were gone, I made this little pie chart for myself. And I said, okay, when we get back, these are the 4 quadrants of life that I want to touch on every day. And it was like connection to my community. It was meaningful. Mothering, my career was part of it, and creativity were part of it. And I thought, if I can just touch on these 4 quadrants, maybe even not every day, but every week, like this is how I'm going to build a life that feels fulfilling for me. And he did the same thing. His pie it's different than mine. And so he is finding fulfillment in kind of building out his pie in the way that he sees it. It's more career focused than mine, quite frankly, and that holds different weight in his life. And part of, I think, the takeaway from this big experience too is like recognizing that that's okay. This is gonna, the ways in which we each find our personal fulfillment is different. And it's just important we continue to support one another and constantly be gauging, like, what does your pie look like? And are you, are the pieces matching up? Like, are you getting the complete circle right now? So that's a little bit of a tangent, but.
No, not at all. I think that's a beautiful way to kind of bring this to a conversation to a close. I think that's what we are all striving for, whatever our pies look like, is to try to fulfill those after, I don't call it a gamble, a risk, whatever you want to say, that we we both went through, and you want something bigger out of it and continue to live for something bigger. And like we've been kind of touching on, we get caught up, we call it the hamster wheel the other day. It's like you just get right back on this thing, and just we're trying to avoid that. So you have been inspiring and validating to us as well in so many different ways. And we can't thank you enough for spending this time. And I like to say this too, for trusting us. I mean, I sent you a DM. You didn't know us, and you were kind enough to respond and have this conversation with us. So thank you for trusting us and inspiring others to do hopefully what we did.
Oh, yeah, of course, guys. It's been lovely. Thank you for the conversation. I think too, when a DM comes through for someone who wants to talk about this stuff, like you have some core commonalities, right?
Yes.
So thank you guys. It's been a pleasure.
It has been a pleasure. And thank you, yes, for trusting us and for the really beautiful conversation that definitely fills our cups and gives us some really amazing, like you said, validation and inspiration. And we want to make sure that everybody checks out all of your website, your Instagram. We'll make sure that's all in the links on the podcast. And we can't thank you enough for spending some time with us. And I don't know, we should meet up somewhere. Where's the next destination? Let's figure it out.
I love it. Let's plan it.
All right. Well, you will stay in touch, and we look forward to chatting very, very soon.
Thank you both.
Hey everyone, I'm Michelle from the Frenchitivity family. Our family has traveled the world over this last year, and the comment that we get most often is, how did you pack? Which I'll be happy to share. But the other question that we've been getting a lot lately is, how did you do it? How did you get your family ready to travel? What was that experience like? How did you make it a reality? So I've been thinking that we'd like to share some of those tips with you, and I'd really like to see if we could get some founding members together. We'll be forming it together live. Just send me a DM if it sounds interesting to you, because I've got some ideas.
The Frenchitivity YouTube channel will have you screaming. Kent, Michelle, and Everly make up the Frenchitivity family who packed up their lives to travel the world in an effort to live life to the fullest. Greece, Thailand, Croatia, Indonesia, and New Zealand are just a few of the countries they experienced along the way. Now they want you to join the journey. Subscribe to the Frenchitivity YouTube channel to see the world with Kent, Michelle, and Everly, one adventure at a time.
One question. When are we going to post this?
Hi, you reached Kent, Michelle, and Everly French. We're unavailable right now, but please leave your name and number at the tone, and we'll get back to you real soon from somewhere around the world.
Kent, Michelle, and Everly spreading Frenchitivity all over the world. This entire family creating possibilities all over the world. Frenchitivity, Frenchitivity, all over the world. Frenchitivity, possibilities all over the world. Come on, take a ride, take a look inside this world of mystery. It's Frenchitivity, 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 all over the world. Frenchitivity, possibilities all over the world.